The Cobra Kai series isn't just a nostalgic nod to the Karate Kid franchise with former antagonist Johnny Lawrence as the main hero. In fact, through its epic story of two karate styles, it allows us to explore a very important issue: father figures. What do we seek from them?
How do they shape us, and what imprints do they leave on our minds?
And how does one escape reproducing toxic ideas and methods from poor father figures, while also separating the toxic things from the good things?
To explore this, we need to follow two lines of teachers and students. The ones that represent Cobra Kai and the ones that represent Miyagi-Do karate.
Each line consists of 3 generations of representatives. On the side of Cobra Kai, it's John Kreese, the founder of Cobra Kai style, Johnny Lawrence, his former student and successor, and Miguel Diaz, Johnny's student.
On the side of Miyagi-Do karate, it's Narioshi Miyagi, the founder of Miyagi-Do karate style, Daniel LaRusso, his student and successor, and Robby Keene, Daniel's student and, ironically, Johnny's son.
In the first 2 Karate Kid movies, the relationship between John Kreese and Johnny Lawrence is depicted as undoubtedly toxic, and the Cobra Kai series elaborates on that. On one hand, John Kreese considers Johnny Lawrence his best student, while Johnny Lawrence, who doesn't get much recognition from his stepfather Sid Weinberg, views Kreese as his father figure, trusting him completely and following all the Cobra Kai rules. On the other hand, John Kreese cares about victories much more than he cares about his students, and it becomes painfully obvious in Karate Kid 2. Cobra Kai, which was led by Kreese in the 80s, accepted no mercy and no defeats, and second best wasn't enough to be considered a winner. Back then, Johnny Lawrence left Cobra Kai, but even though he realized that his sensei, who he viewed as a father, didn't treat him fairly, the Cobra Kai principles stuck with him. And in a way, they ruined Johnny, because even though he realized that Kreese was unfair towards him and the other students, Johnny still believed what Kreese taught him. And according to Cobra Kai values, your efforts don't really matter until you're number 1. By the standards of a teaching that made him badass as a teenager, a grown-up Johnny turned out to be a loser. Within 2 Karate Kid movies, he lost a girlfriend that he really loved. Then he lost a tournament. And as he became an adult, Johnny kept losing things and people he valued, one by one, from his son Robbie to his job, until he hit rock bottom.
Daniel LaRusso, on the other hand, went down a completely different path. Mr. Miyagi, who replaced his late father for him, taught Daniel balance in all aspects, not just in karate. Their teacher-student relationship began when Mr. Miyagi protected Daniel from bullies, and its protection, self-protection as well as protection of others, that later becomes one of Daniel's key values. For Mr. Miyagi, it was never about victory. It was always about his student finding inner peace and doing what's right. Unlike Kreese, Mr. Miyagi gave Daniel LaRusso a healthy model to follow. And even though LaRusso's life had its ups and downs, he even joined Cobra Kai once. He respected Mr. Miyagi's principles throughout his life and turned out to be a success. Unlike Johnny, Daniel ended up with a smart and beautiful wife, Amanda, with whom he had 2 kids and started a business with. He turned out to be a happy man. At least that's what we see at the beginning of the Cobra Kai series, until Daniel sees that Cobra Kai is revived.
Now, let us be clear. Despite the fact that Cobra Kai was labeled a dark, toxic martial arts style in the Karate Kid movies, due to being aggressive and merciless, in the series we can see that, despite the previous movies, Cobra Kai vs. Miyagi-Do karate does not represent an evil versus good conflict. Being a Cobra Kai fighter doesn't automatically make you bad. And the Cobra Kai style itself can develop and change, leaving the toxic bits behind, turning into something better, while keeping all the effectiveness, as long as it is taught by the right teacher. As I've already said, Johnny Lawrence couldn't become a father and teacher to his own son, Robbie. Yet when he reluctantly protects his teenage neighbor, Miguel Diaz, from bullies, Miguel wants to study karate under him. Now, Miguel Diaz is nothing like Johnny Lawrence used to be in school after he joined Cobra Kai. He is not popular. He is not strong. If anything, Miguel himself and the situation that brings him and Johnny Lawrence together resembles young Daniel LaRusso and the situation in which he got acquainted with Mr. Miyagi. And yet, Miguel is willing to learn, and Johnny Lawrence, annoyed by a brief encounter with his former rival, decides to reopen Cobra Kai. even though it is just for one student in the beginning. He teaches Miguel what he has been taught by Kreese. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. And yet, something is different about Cobra Kai under Johnny Lawrence's influence, even before Season 2, where he decides to slightly shift the no mercy rule. The thing is, Johnny Lawrence actually cares for his students, and especially Miguel. Even though he teaches his students that they have to win at any cost, he cares about them more than victory. Miguel Diaz changes his sensei just as Johnny Lawrence changes him. And it's not just that moment at the end of Season 1 where Johnny's students hurt his own son in the tournament that makes him change the rules of Cobra Kai. When Johnny Lawrence becomes a sensei to Miguel, he realizes even more distinctively how wrong Kreese was in some of his ideas. Johnny doesn't want his students to win through dirty methods. He might still think that in most cases the rival doesn't deserve mercy. But he also realizes that sometimes showing no mercy means losing honor. And that makes Cobra Kai, which he used to make himself and his students badass, lose its awesomeness. Because beating someone weaker doesn't make you a good fighter. To be a good fighter, you need to take on someone stronger.
The main conflict between Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso in Cobra Kai happens because Daniel remembers the former Cobra Kai under the control of John Kreese. For him, the whole Cobra Kai ideology is toxic. He doesn't notice and doesn't know that the new students of Cobra Kai are not the popular kids that use their knowledge to bully the weak. The new students of Cobra Kai are mostly social outcasts that intend to change their narratives and become better and stronger, and not let anyone laugh at them anymore. Cobra Kai, resurrected by Johnny Lawrence, still has an aggressive stance. But over the course of the series, Johnny Lawrence, who gets to meet his former toxic sensei once more, removes all the toxicity from his dojo. Cobra Kai isn't dark anymore. It's just a different approach that is based on attack, not on defense. And closer to the end of the second season, Daniel and Johnny both realize that both of their ways are okay if taught correctly.
Too bad it happens after John Kreese returns and puts some more toxic trash in the brains of Lawrence's students.
But before we get to that, let's review the teacher-student relationship between Daniel LaRusso and Johnny's son, Robby Keene. While Johnny Lawrence was learning how to be a good sensei to Miguel Diaz and others, Daniel LaRusso became his son's sensei. And let's put it clearly, Daniel is no Mr. Miyagi. He knows some methods, but not all of them. He knows some answers, but some questions are too hard to answer. Unlike Johnny Lawrence, his way of mentoring is patient and soft. Though you can't say that Johnny isn't patient when it's necessary. And the balance that is core to Miyagi-Do karate turns out to be a very fitting value for Robbie, who comes from a troubled home. Robbie needs balance and a positive father figure in his life. And Daniel LaRusso gives him both of these things, despite temporary conflicts and moments of distrust. What's more important, Daniel is careful enough not to drive Robbie away from his real family. While Johnny Lawrence has to fight toxicity passed on to him by his sensei, Daniel LaRusso tries to keep Miyagi's standards, and manages most of the time.
Yet, the rivalry between the two dojos turns extreme as John Kreese returns to town, which shows us one more sad truth. No matter how well one might realize that his or her father figure is toxic, it's hard not to seek approval from someone so important to you. It doesn't matter how many years have passed. It doesn't matter how many times you've reevaluated your relationship. There is often that kid inside of us who is still looking up to someone who gave you something to hold on to in your childhood. And this kid wants approval so badly, especially if it was always withheld.
That's the trap John Kreese lures Johnny into the second season. He offers him validation and approval. He offers him an apology even. And Johnny forgives him and eventually welcomes him into his dojo because he needed that apology and approval because it was impossible to reject them.
But Kreese never changed. He has this war-oriented mentality caused by the past that will be explored in Season 3, where manipulating and playing dirty is the right way, where victory at any cost is the right way, where what he did to young Johnny Lawrence after he got second place was justified. And so he takes away Johnny's dojo, while Johnny nearly loses Miguel, his best student. It happens not only because of Miguel following through with his new "sometimes you show mercy" rule, but also due to the rivalry between Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do karate students getting riled up by Kreese. Basically, Kreese leaves Johnny Lawrence in ruins by the end of Season 2, abusing his trust once again.
While While Daniel LaRusso, who only realized that Cobra Kai could actually be better than he remembers at the end of Season 2, is left with his own painful consequences of being lured into steering the conflict between the students of the two dojos. His daughter got hurt, and his favorite student Robbie is to blame for accidentally crippling Miguel Diaz, or possibly for his death.
However, if the series decides to explore the father figures, toxicity, and teacher-student relationships further in Season 3, it would be very logical for Daniel LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence to unite and stand up to John Kreese. They need to realize that they are grown-ups and new father figures for their students. Kreese thinks in terms of war, but he's not at war anymore.
That's why it's time for Johnny and Daniel to take Kreese down and make the rivalry between the two dojos a healthy one.
Because it doesn't really matter which style you learn, Cobra Kai or Miyagi-Do, as long as you are taught to use it for the right cause, and if your teacher genuinely cares for you.
Do you agree with that, or do you prefer one of the styles to another?
Subscribe and let us know in the comments.